I'm going to give you some of the grad school perspective. I'm one of 6 staff members there who will review your dissertation when it comes in. So if you get revisions back, those would come from me. So if I work with your program, so it depends on program. But the formatting guide is not from the graduate school. It's really university-wide. So it is a form of branding for the accomplishments that come out of the university, so that they're all in the same format. Something I would caution you against, some departments actually have templates, but I would caution you against those. They tend to be outdated. If you want the most up-to-date information, you're going to need to go to our website. Let's see. Start using the formatting guide as soon as possible. Hopefully you've already been taking a look at that. And also pay attention to the submission deadlines for each term. So if you go to graduation deadlines on our website and you see, say, April 12th for May, that means your dissertation should be formatted as correctly as possible using the guide by that date. Revisions can come after that date. Does that make sense? That confuses a lot of people. Okay, great. Okay, just to give you some kind of insider tips here, there are several thesis and dissertation guides that can really help you within the guide. Let's see. So here we have the guide here. If you go to this left-hand menu and go all the way to the bottom, you will see basically these last 3 items are really helpful. There's a submission steps. Okay, that gives you step-by-step what you need to do to get the document to us through ProQuest. ProQuest also has a lot of FAQs that are really helpful there. Okay, here we have a submission checklist. So this is everything that we at the graduate school are going to be checking. Okay, so if any of these haven't been done or are not done quite correctly, we'll be sending them back to you. Okay, so that's helpful. If you're more visual, we have sample pages here. Okay, if you click on that, it gives you an entire thesis or dissertation document, okay, with the spacing and exactly how it should appear. Okay? So some people, this is more helpful. Like if you have your dissertation right next to this and follow this, you'll be in good shape. Okay. We'd like to talk a little bit about the common errors where revisions are frequently needed. So those are title pages, page orientation, page numbers, the table of contents, references, and a lot of people want to know how to incorporate previously published work into the document. Oops. Okay, so let's see. If we go to the sample pages, or actually you can go to the guide. So the first thing is the title page. There are always a lot of errors on this. You'll see the spacing is really specific, you just use the names of your committee members. You don't put PhD or any kind of title. And something that Patrick will show you today, you have to suppress that page number. So no page numbers on the title page. After that, you're going to see pagination is different. Patrick will go through this with you. Even though you have no page number on the title page, you're going to have Roman numerals up until the first page of chapter 1 or your introduction, where you'll start with Arabic numeral 1. So that gives people trouble sometimes. Let's see, table of contents. Okay, Yep, these can be really complicated. Your numbers need to be aligned. They need to match what's actually within the document. Let's see here. If you've got a really long title, we call these leaders, the rows of dots. If you've got a really long title of a chapter or a section, some people want to put that whole thing there and have 2 dots. You really need to break it up halfway through the section in order to make that work. Okay, so it can get kind of tricky formatting that. Let's see, what else do we have? References. People have a lot of questions about this. Mainly we're looking for title 1 inch from the top, single space each reference, double space between references. Your style will vary by discipline. If you use APA or another style guide, that's perfectly fine. We're just checking for that particular very simple specification. Okay? And finally, footnotes. Just a couple of things about that. Okay, so you'll see that there's this line here, and mainly we're going to look for 1 inch from the bottom of the page and single space each footnote, double space between them. A lot of people related to footnotes ask about previously published work. So if you have an article or chapter from another book, you can't simply make a copy of that and stick it into the dissertation. You'll need to have it in the uniform format with the rest of the guide, and then down here have a footnote, cite previously published in and where it was published. Okay? So I'll be here if we have questions throughout, and I will turn it over to Patrick.
All right. Well, so my name is Patrick Brandt. I'm the Director of Career Development and Outreach in the Office of Biomedical Graduate Education. So I work with the life science PhD students, and I was a life science PhD student also, so the file that I sent to you guys for practice is a truncated version of my dissertation so that you can practice on that one and mess it all up and won't mess up your own. So we are going to talk about a lot of the things that Jenny mentioned, but maybe not all of them. So I'm glad that she's going to stay here to be able to answer questions. It'll probably take us until about 2:15 to get through everything, and that will give us another 15 minutes if anybody has specific questions that the group might be able to help to answer, or questions for Jenny or questions for me. There'll be a little bit of time up in there. Okay, so I'm going to leave up, I really want to second what Jenny said about the value of this submission checklist and the sample pages. We're going to refer back to these quite a bit throughout this workshop. All right, I'm just going to make sure that we're still recording. Yep, good. All right, so if you can pull up, did everybody get the email from me last night? Or this may have been early this morning? No? Okay. So, would you be able to forward him the... You don't have it either? Okay. All right. Let's see. All right. Okay, so we'll just need to... Awesome. Okay, so, yes, I will... Well, actually, let's see what we can do. I can forward it to one of you, and the other can give your email to him. So what's your email address? Or what's... J-B-O-M-B-O-W. Did I get it right there? Bonin. Okay, got it. All right. Okay. You good? All right. Does everybody else have it? What's that? Yes. Okay, so we're going to start off very simply, and then we're going to go into more complex things using the worksheets that are on the tables there. So first thing that I want to show you is when you're dealing with a really large document, it's helpful to use the document map. And so if you click on View, then you can go to Navigation pane. Again, that's under the View Navigation pane. And then it'll come up with this document map. Sometimes, depending on what you last had opened, sometimes your navigation pane will have the pages like this, so you just want to click on headings. That will help you today to be able to navigate to different parts of this sample document. And once we finish with today, even if you don't have any headings in your document, which you may or may not, you'll know how to be able to create this document map over here in your own file. The other thing that I want to show, let me just back up real quickly to say that I see all of you have computers, and it looks like you all have PCs, so that's good. But your screen may not look exactly, or your menu may not look exactly like this one. So if you're having a hard time finding the button that I'm using, just raise your hand. Someone else probably is having a similar issue, so that way we can be sure that you can follow along as we go. If you get behind, it'll be really difficult to be able to catch back up. So if you feel like you're falling behind, or if you have any questions, just raise your hand. All right, so the other thing that we're going to look at and use quite a bit when we're formatting a big document like this is the showing and hiding the non-printing characters, which happens to be on the Home tab. And if your screen isn't very big, then you might have to click on this button, paragraph, in order to be able to find this backwards P button. That backwards P shows and hides the non-printing characters. And that's really important when we are trying to figure out how many line breaks do we have. Do we have a page break or a section break at the bottom of the page? So be sure that you know how to find that. Can everybody find that button? Okay. All right. The first thing we're going to talk about is that many of these pages, especially the ones before Chapter 1, everything before Chapter 1 are called the 4 pages, F-O-R-E. And so many of them have special margin requirements. Often it's that you have to have an additional 2 inches or an additional inch at the top of the margin. So generally, like when we come down to Chapter 1, for example, all right, well, Chapter 1 actually needs 2 inches too. But after Chapter 1, then everything else is just going to have 1 inch at the top, 1 inch at the bottom, and then, as it shows here, 1 inch on either side. So what I would suggest that you do is set up your margins. I believe that's on the Layout tab. Set up your margins so that there's 1 inch all the way around. Then the question is, how do you add that extra inch on the top of some of those pages and make sure that it's exactly right? The wrong way... Yep. Oh, interesting. Jenny, do you? Okay. All right, great question. So the wrong way to do it is just by putting a bunch of enters until you think you've got an extra inch, because the grad school really is going to measure to make sure that you have the right amount. So there was a student named Oren Abeles who showed me this trick, and so I always want to give him credit because it makes this a whole lot easier. So if you want to get that extra inch, what you can do is just keep one line break, and then you can insert a table or a cell that's exactly 1 inch high. And so to do that, you put your cursor where you want to have that extra inch, and you click on Insert, and then here under Table, you click that. You can just choose a 1x1 table, and then you can right-click within that table, and under Table Properties, you can go to Row, and you can specify the height. There's actually let me show you an easier way to do that instead of going through all of those. If your cursor is in the cell, you can just click on Layout, and then right now it's set to be 0.38 inches. You can just set this to be exactly 1 inch. Press Enter. You will want to get rid of this extra line break right here. So I'm going to delete that. So now we have the 1 inch margin from the regular document plus an extra inch right here. Now, in order to get rid of the box that's around it, you can just select the whole thing, and then either from the menu that pops up here, you can choose No Border, or you can also do that from up in here somewhere. I think it might be under paragraph. Yeah, it's under paragraph. You can also get to it from that way. Click on no border. I'm going to keep the border there for right now though, because you're going to need this little trick in a few different places. So if you select it by hovering over that box that's up in the upper left-hand corner, and then click on it, that's going to select the whole thing. Then we can do a Control-C to copy it. And then go down to the next place in the document where you need to have an extra inch. And we're going to press Control-V. But by default, it's just going to paste it as text. So what you want to do is choose to paste the entire cell. And then again, we're going to have to delete that extra right there. So it's kind of handy to know where you've done this, in what areas you've done this. So that's why I like to leave the box around it. But afterward, you'll need to go through and remove the borders around it so that it looks correct. Yes. So you could do that, but the problem is that even in the 4 pages, there are different requirements on different pages. So sometimes it's an inch, and sometimes it's 2 inches. So you'd have to have lots of different sections. And what we're going to talk about next is the page numbering. And you want to minimize the number of sections because page numbers get mixed up by section breaks. But yes, so that is another way to do it, just perhaps a little more time consuming. That is also another way you can do it. Yeah, if you remember, so if you are single spaced, then 72-point font is equal to 1 inch. But that only works also, that's also not fail-safe, because if you have any points after it, then it will make it bigger than 1 inch. So even if you have 72-point font, but you have 6 points of font after it, which sometimes, depending on which heading style you're using, then it can also become problematic. But yes, so there are lots of different, and you guys will see there's lots of different ways to do most everything that we'll be talking about today. Okay, great. Any other questions or comments or tips that you guys know about? Okay. All right, so next we're going to talk about page numbering. So Jenny mentioned that the beginning of the document, the title page counts as page number 1, but it doesn't. Page number 1 doesn't show up in the bottom of the first page. So to get into the footer, to be able to put a page number there, you're going to double click in the footer, and that opens up the header and footer menu. And you can click on page number and click on bottom of page, and we just want a plain number. So the preset is going to be plain number 2, and that will put the number at the bottom in the center of the footer. Now, UNC wants to see, in the 4 pages, it's going to be lowercase Roman numerals as opposed to Arabic numerals like this, the ones we're used to. So if you go to Format Page, if you click again, when you're in the footer, click on Page Number and then click on Format Page Numbers, it'll format the page numbers that are in the section that you're currently in. And this will all make sense in just a moment more. So in this case, we're going to change the number format to lowercase Roman numerals, which is these I, double I, and triple I right there. And since we're at the beginning of the section, we can either have it start at 1 or we can continue from previous section, it doesn't matter. And we're going to click on OK. So now at the beginning of our chapter 1, we have lowercase Roman numeral 1. And so we're partway there, but we don't want the page number to appear on the first page of your dissertation. So to get rid of that, you select different first page. All right, so by selecting this button right here, different first page, now our Roman numeral 1 is gone, but at the bottom of page 2, it still has, so if page 1 counts as page 1, it just doesn't show up on the page. So we're good here. Let's. Sure. Yep. Which part? Yep. Okay. So to make the number go here, I'm going to do a Control Z, so that at the bottom of our title page we have the lowercase Roman numeral. So if we want to get rid of it there, we're going to double click, and then that's going to bring us into the header and footer menu, and we're going to select different first page. Did that work on yours? Okay, good. All right, so let's now use the document map on and go down to, yeah. That's right. That's right. And that's what the grad school wants. So if we go back to the sample pages, there's no page number on the first page. And we come down to the second page, it counts as number 2. Okay. Great question. All right. Any other questions? We're good? All right. Oh, yes. Huh. Is anybody else having that issue? Okay. What did you figure out was the issue? Oh, okay. All right. Good to know. It can be finicky sometimes. All right. So for your dissertation, at the beginning of chapter 1, you're going to start the page numbering over, and it's going to return to Arab, or it's going to go to Arabic numerals like the 1, 2, 3s that we're used to. So let's go down and look to see what we have right now. If you click on chapter 1 in the document map, then if you're following along in the document that I sent to you, then it says this is, I think I'm really bad with Roman numerals. I think that's 15, right? Yeah, but you could also see it down here. So this is Roman numeral 15, but it needs to start over at 1. So the way that you start your page numbering over is by creating a new section. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between section breaks and page breaks. And again, in order to know which one you have there, you have to click on these, you have to show the non-printing characters. So currently at the end of the 4 pages, we have a page break there, but we need to put a section break instead. And the breaks are found under the layout. There may be a different, actually maybe an insert too. No, it's under layout. So under layout, there's a breaks button. If you click on that, you see a whole bunch. Looks like there are 7 different types of breaks. Usually the most commonly used ones are the page break and the section break that goes to a next page. When you use a page break, is if you want to avoid hitting enter a whole bunch of times to bring your cursor down to the next page, you just hit a page break and that'll do the same thing. A section break is going to be similar, but it's going to isolate that part of the document so that the page numbering and also the orientation of the page, which we'll talk about when we're talking about flipping orientation of pages, that's where you need to have a section break. So I have my cursor over here at the end of the page break. You can either delete the page break or you can put the section break right after it. I'm just going to put it right after it. So I'm going to click on layout, breaks, section break to next page. And so now I have a section break right there. Now whenever you put a section break, it also puts a new line break, an enter, if you will, on the next page. Usually you don't want that, so just be aware that you're going to have to delete that as well. Alright, so now let's go down and take a look at what happened to our page number. So now we don't have a page number at the bottom of page 1 of chapter 1 anymore. And we're still back to Roman numerals on the bottom of this page 2 of chapter 1. So basically what it's done is you created a new section, but it's referring back to the section before it to get the instructions for the page numbering. So we need to double click into the new section and change the formatting. So here we are on, I've double clicked into the footer of chapter 1. And I'm going to click on the page number and go to format page numbers. I'm just going to change back, I'm going to change to Arabic numerals. And I don't want to continue from the previous section. I want to start at 1. So when I click on OK, then at the bottom of page 2, we're good because it says number 2. At the bottom of page 1 of chapter 1, it doesn't have the number, but we have to have the number there. So how are we going to get the number back? Yep, we're going to deselect different first page. So now we've got our number 1 there, number 2, and on and on. Now at the beginning of chapter 2 and all your subsequent chapters, the page numbering is just going to continue. So so it'll just run on all the way through to the end of the appendix and the references and everything. So you don't have to create a new section for every chapter. All right. Let's just double check, because sometimes Word can be finicky. I'm going to go back up and make sure that the changes that I made in chapter 1 haven't propagated forward into the 4 pages. Then I'll get your question to see. Okay, so this looks good. This all looks good. Let's go to the beginning of page 1. Oops. Okay, so on my version, we're still okay. It didn't change anything. Almost always there's somebody who's using a version of Word where it's been messed up. Is your question related to page numbering? Your page is saying number 15? 16? Okay. So let's go. So probably what happened. So here where mine says 1 at the bottom of page 1, yours says 16. Okay. So probably what happened is you just need to go into the footer and then format page numbers, and down here where it says continue from previous section, change that to start at number 1. Let me know if that works for you. That work? Awesome. Okay, good. All right. All right, so any questions about page numbering? Yes. Okay, great question. I am not totally sure on that, but I believe that if you go into layout and margins, there's something called the gutter. Yeah. Oh wait, no. So let's see, gutter. This one's set at 0. Let's see. So yes, so your question is, how do you make sure that this is ½ an inch from the bottom of the page as required? That is a good question. I don't know. Okay. Custom margins. Okay, layout. Thank you very much. All right. Oh, there it is too. Thank you. That's the benefit of doing these workshops in person, because there's a lot of knowledge out there. Thanks, you guys. Okay. Any other questions about page numbering? Excellent point. Yes. Yeah, that is an excellent point. So you shouldn't have any other line breaks within the footer. So the way mine was originally. But the good news is if you change it once, it'll change in all the footers. All right. Awesome. Okay. All right. Now you can either, to get out of the header and the footer, you can either double click into the main body of the page, or you can click on, there's a button here called close header and footer. Okay. So what we're going to do right now is we are going to talk about making automatically updating tables of contents. Oh no, actually let's do this one first. We're going to go to this worksheet that says instructions for orienting page numbers on landscape pages to satisfy the UNC thesis and dissertation guidelines. So there are 14 different steps on this document. And so we're going to talk about how to do this and why you would want to do this. So if you scroll down in this document, in the practice document, to page 8, so it's page 8 of chapter 1. It's also page 22 of the document. And I'm going to try to make this a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to make the whole thing, the whole page smaller, just so you can see what the issue is here. Okay, so on page 8, we have this table that would be much better as a if the page were turned and in landscape than in portrait, because we don't have our 1-inch margin on either side. But if you simply were to click on that, oops, where did I go? If you were to put your cursor in there and then click on layout and click on orientation and change it to landscape, what would happen? You've probably tried this. It would change the orientation of everything in that section. So we need to isolate the page or the pages that we want to turn with a section break before and after it. Now, if you had a really long table that you wanted to change like 3 or 4 pages to be landscape pages, you only have to put the section break at the beginning and end of the pages that are going to turn, not every single page you want to turn. So we've already talked a little bit about how to do that. So we're going to go to the end of the page prior to the page we're going to turn, and we're going to add a section break there. We'll go to the next page. And remember, when you click on a next page section break, it automatically puts an extra line break on the following page, so you're going to want to delete that. And then we're going to go to the bottom of the last page that's going to be turned, and we are going to put a section break there also. And then every time you have to delete the extra line break that is created. So now we're on we're on step number 3 in the worksheet. It talks about the page numbers. So not surprisingly, when we created a new section or 2 new sections, we messed up the page numberings. So you'll see that here we're at page 7, that's good. But now we're back at page 1. So you guys should know how to fix that. And we're going to double click into the footer. And let me make this a little bit bigger again so everybody can see it. So we're going to go to Format. We're going to go to the Page Number button, Format Page Numbers, and we're going to ask it to continue from the previous section. So that's good. But if we go to page 9, it's also gone back to page 1. So we need to do the same thing there as well. Click on Page Number, Format Page Numbers, and continue from previous section. If you have here's a little trick that you can use. If you have a lot of different sections for whatever reason, you can go from one section to the next by clicking on Previous and Next. All right. So now we are on step number 4. And you'll notice that on the page, so when we're in the footer view, see how it says Same as Previous over here? And this button right here, Link to Previous, we want to totally isolate the page that we're going to turn, because we're going to also change the location of the page number. So we've isolated it with section breaks, but we also have to isolate it within the footer, and so we have to deselect Link to Previous on the page that's turning. We also have to deselect Link to Previous. Oh, actually, I was in the section that started on page 9, so it did it here. But now we have to go up here and deselect it on this page as well. So that Same as Previous goes away. The Link to Previous is now gone. And that takes care of steps 4 and 5. All right. So that's a great question. We're doing that because in just a second, we're going to turn this page. Well, actually, so hold that thought, and you'll see in just a second. All right, so let me make this a little bit smaller. So now that we've totally isolated page 8, we can close the header and the footer and put our cursor anywhere on page 8. And then if we go to Layout, on the Layout tab here, Orientation, and click on Landscape, then it changes just page 8. 7's good. 8 is the way we want it. The table looks much better. And 9 looks good as well. But the issue now is that our page number 8 is going to be on the right-hand side if you were to bind this, or if you were to create a PDF. Now, instead of the page number being on the bottom of the page, now it's on the right-hand side of the page. So we need to move this page number over to here. And in the next steps when we do that, if you don't deselect Link to Previous, then it will propagate the changes that you make forward and backward in your document. So it seems like some programmer at Microsoft should, I mean, I've been teaching this workshop, I think, for almost 10 years, and they haven't yet made it any, it still takes 14 steps to just change where the page number is. Okay. Okay, good. Yeah. Then it'll put me out of a job, but that's okay, too. Okay. So, all right, now we are on step number 7. So we're going to go into the footer, and we're going to select the page number. So you have to like either mouse over it and select it. Oops. Let me go. When I did that, it changed the. Okay, so we're in the footer. Do like a shift arrow. Anyway, you want it to be clear that you have selected that page number. And then we're going to do a Control X. Or actually, I think you can just delete it. And then, okay, now we are on step 8. With the cursor on the page, you want to, okay, we already did that. We'll change the orientation. Now, within the footer of the rotated page, we're on step 9. Click on page number, page margins, plain number, border left, so that's right here. And now it has put our page 8, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller again. It's put our page 8 on the on the left margin. Let's just make sure that, okay, I always have to hold my breath. Page 7 is still correct. Page 9 is, oh, we have an issue here. It changed. Let's see. Oh, same as previous. I'm not sure if this is gonna. We may have to do a Control Z. No, I think we're good. That fixed it. But what? Yeah. So. Oh, I know. Yes. That's because. Okay. Thank you. I've skipped a step, and it's in number. Let's see. Where is the deselect? Oh, continue. You have to do it in both the header and the footer in the PC version of Word. It's different in the Mac version of Word. So, all right, so let's make sure. All right, just for good measure, I'm in the header of page 8 now, and I'm also going to deselect link to previous. All right, so, oh yeah, because, yep, it did the same thing here. All right, so I'm going to delete page 7. That should have. Now let's just go up and see if it changed in the 4 pages. No, we're good. Okay, so my error was that I didn't deselect, I didn't go into the header as well as the footer to deselect link to previous. Is everybody okay with that? Sorry about that oversight on my part. Okay, so now you'll notice that we have a line underneath the 8, and I'm not sure exactly why that is by default there, but if you click on Home and then Paragraph, we can remove that border by clicking on the No Border underneath this window right here. Okay, but we still have another issue, and that is that the number 8 needs to be turned 90 degrees. And so now we are on, let's see, select the text box, which probably has a bottom border on it. Okay, so we just did number 10. Click the text direction button in the Drawing Tools Format tab. All right. Now we've selected this. Okay, shape format, I think is where it is. Yes, okay. Nope, let's see. Text direction, okay. All right, so this is where you find that. It's a little different every time I do this. So if you select the text box, then it'll open up the shape format menu bar, and then text direction, you can change it from horizontal to rotate all text 90 degrees. And then you're probably also going to have to center that within the box. so that it ends up exactly halfway in the middle of the page. All right. So lots and lots of steps for what should be a pretty simple thing, but that's one of the, I mean, there are lots of benefits of using Word, but this is definitely one of the pain points. All right, any questions on any of those steps? Okay, to rotate it, you have to select, actually you have to be in the header and the footer, and then you can select the box, and then you go to shape format, and then click on find the text direction thing and change and rotate all the text automatically. All right. Okay, if you have the line that's on the bottom of it. Okay. Is it like it's underlined? Oh. Okay. If you hide the non-printing characters using that backwards P, does it go away? No? Okay, let me take a look. An apparent line on the left side of the screen. Okay, we have another person. So I haven't ever seen that particular problem before. So maybe you guys can see if you can, if you figure out how to get rid of it. Okay, so how did you do that? Okay, so you went to shape format and got rid of the shape outline, but you also had to go, okay, you also have to go to home, paragraph, and remove that border. Okay, and did that work for you as well? All right, nice. Okay, so we're done with, well, are there any questions before we move to another task that's it's commonly needed? All right, what we're going to talk about next is creating automatically updated tables of contents, lists of tables, figures, equations, etc. Okay, so you'll notice that if you go to the beginning of chapter 1 and you put your cursor anywhere on chapter 1's title, then let's see. Okay, under styles, if you pop this menu out, so again, let's see. Okay, you can do it two different ways. So the styles button right here, if you click on the button, it'll show you that heading 1 has been selected for chapter title 1. If you click on the first subheading underneath, then that's heading 2. If you're doing a lot of work with your styles, you can also pop out the style menu by clicking on this little button right here. And then you can click on here, and that's heading 1. Subheadings are tagged with heading 2, and the regular text is just body style or normal. Let's see what it says when we do this. Yeah, normal. Okay, so that answers that's going to take care of two things. Number one, that's how you get an outline over here. Because see how this says headings? So anything that's tagged with a heading style 1 is going to be left justified. Anything that's with a heading style 2 is going to be all of your subheading is going to be underneath here. And when you create a PDF, Adobe is smart enough to generally use these as for the document map in Adobe when you're opening it up in Acrobat too. Acrobat Reader. All right, that same thing is also important for creating automatically updating tables of contents. And so you can go through and you can, if you have already written your dissertation and you want to create an automatically updating table of contents, then you can just go through and you can select the text I'm not sure why it all disappeared like that. That was... I've never had it do that before. Oh, interesting. Okay, so if you... thank you. If you select the text, then you can define or you can assign a heading by then clicking on the heading styles and choosing any one of these. All right. So then what you're going to want to do is go up in the document to where you want your table of contents to be. And you're going to put your cursor right underneath table of contents because, again, the grad school has defined, in these sample pages, they have defined exactly how they want the table of contents to look. So it's going to be in a very specific area of the 4 pages. It has that extra 2-inch margin. You'll notice that the table of contents doesn't start with the title page or even with anything before the table of contents. The table of contents only includes things that are after the table of contents. So the list of tables is the first thing that appears there. And so that's page 4. All right, so keep that in mind as we go to our document now. And we're going to click on, okay, so let me back up a little bit. So in order for things to not appear in the table of contents that are before the table of contents, you need to be sure that you don't use heading styles for any of these things. So if you click on here and choose styles, it's normal. And I've just bolded it and centered it to make it look like you want to have that same look and feel throughout your document, but you don't want to mark this as heading style 1 or it's going to appear in the table of contents. All right, so now with that background information, we've got our table of contents. We put our cursor where we want the table of contents to appear, and then we're going to go to the References tab. We're going to click on Table of Contents. And there's a couple of built-in or pre-stylized, pre-made tables of contents. We don't want to use any of those. We're just going to use, because these have different colors and they're not the style that the grad school wants. So just click on Custom Table of Contents. And this shows both a web preview and a print preview. And you might remember that Jenny was saying that we need to have these periods as tab leaders and we need to right align the page numbers. So thankfully, in most of your versions of Word, those will be the defaults for the custom table of contents. So we want it to show the page numbers, we want to right align page numbers, and the tab leader is the series of dots. If you happen to have a different tab leader, you can change it here. Now, you can have, I think the grad school allows you to have either 2 or 3 levels in your table of contents. So if you had your chapter headings and then you had your subheadings and then you had another subsection that you had marked with heading style 3, if there were lots and lots and lots of those, it might make your table of contents like 3 or 4 pages long, which kind of defeats the purpose of a table of contents. So if you only wanted to use heading style 1 and 2, then you could decrease the levels here. And did you see how the preview changes when you do that as well? So, but we're going to just keep it as heading or level 3. And then we're going to click on OK. And then that puts in our automatic table of contents. So it's gathered everything that's marked with heading style 1 and put it, so it looks like this. It's gathered everything with heading style 2 and put it here. Now you'll notice a couple, if your version of Word is like mine, you'll notice that there's a couple of issues. One is that these are not fully right aligned. And another issue is that chapter 2 has a long title, and instead of it being single spaced, it's double spaced. So let me show you the process for, well, you have to do just a one-time change to fix both of those issues. And then every time you update the table of contents, it'll stay that way. Or it'll keep the formatting the way we want it. Okay, so we're going to we're going to put our cursor in the table of contents and then click on table of contents. And then we're going to click on custom table of contents again. So we're basically going to modify this one. And you see that there are 2 buttons down here. There's options and modify. Let's look at options first. That one's pretty simple and you probably won't need to use it, but just in case you had maybe you don't like the way heading style 1 looks and you prefer heading style 2 and heading style 3, you could define which headings, which styles are going to be your table of contents levels. So by default, heading 1 is TOC 1, heading 2 is TOC 2, and down to heading 3. But say you didn't like heading style 1 and you wanted everything that you marked with heading style 2 to be TOC level 1, you could change it like this and then update it. But that's not what we're going to do for this. That's how you would do it. So I just clicked on reset and then it puts everything back to 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to cancel out of here. But what we need to do in order to get rid of that issue with the tab leaders are not quite right aligned, we need to go to modify. And it's going to ask us what do we want to modify. We're going to modify, we have to modify both TOC1 and TOC2. And I'll show you the process for doing with TOC1 first. So we select TOC1 and click on modify. And then do you see how here it's giving you a preview, and see how it shows that this is not quite right justified? So that's because there's an issue with the tabs. And again, I don't know why for the last 10 years that I've been doing this. Jenny, you probably see this all the time, right? This people put in their dissertations and they've got this weird tab leader up there. So to get rid of that, you have to go to Format Tabs, and then there's a tab stop position at 5.99 inches. And you want to clear that, or you can just press Clear All. And click on OK. That took care of one of the issues that we had. The other issue was that we had a really long title for Chapter 2. And it was double-spaced between, and the grad school would like to see it single-spaced between and double-spaced after. So to do that, we're going to format the paragraph. You guys probably recognize this dialog box. It comes up when you're like doing stuff in other other areas of Word. But what we want to do is we want to change this spacing to be single-spaced with 12 points after. What that's going to do is it's going to make anything that goes onto another line, that's going to be single-spaced between, and double-spaced, and then there'll be an extra 12 points of spacing afterward. Now, if your whole document is using 11-point font, like sometimes people use 11-point font or 12-point font. If you're using 11-point in the rest of your document, you'd want to put this to 11-point. So then now we're going to click on OK and OK. Now, if you had any long subheading, you'd have to do that for TOC2 as well. But we don't have that issue, so we're not going to do it here. We're just going to keep on clicking OK. And then it says, do you want to replace this table of contents? And yes, we want to replace the table of contents that's been selected. So now what we've got is our, everything's right aligned correctly. Our long title is single space between, double spaced after. And so the if you wanted to do this such that this word, the word complex, ends up on, it breaks a little bit differently. Like this is about 3/4 of the way across, so it would probably pass just fine. But say that it was way over here, you can put your cursor there and then press Shift Enter. Don't press Enter because it'll make a new line. But just press Shift Enter, and that'll put the that word down on the next line. All right. So now we've got this great document, but what if you add a new subheading, or what if you add a bunch of text and now the page numbering needs to be updated? How do you do that? Well, it's pretty simple. You just put your cursor anywhere in the table of contents so that the table of contents turns gray. Do a right click and then click on Update Field. And it'll give you the chance to update the page numbers only or to update the entire field. If you update the page number only, then it's going to keep all the text the same way it is. But if you added any new subsections, or if you changed the title of one of your chapters, then you would have to update the entire table. Now, when you update the entire table, you are going to lose small edits, like putting the word complex. See how complex goes back on? So you'd have to do that again if you had a very long title that didn't break correctly. All right. Any questions? So it's kind of might seem like a lot of work, but if any of you have ever created manually created a table of contents, this is way easier. Especially if you make any changes. Okay. Now what we're going to talk about to finish this out is how you can do something very similar to create automatically updating lists of tables and lists of figures. Now, depending on your discipline, you might have like lists of maps or lists of equations or lists of schemes or something like that. You can do this same process that we're going to talk about for however many lists you wanted to create. We're just going to do lists of tables and lists of figures because those are the two most common ones. And they are also given as examples in the dissertation guide. So the list of tables looks very much like a table of contents with the tab leaders and the page numbers. Same with list of figures. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, great question. So if heading style 1 doesn't look like you want it to, maybe it was modified by a previous user of your computer, or it just comes along and like it doesn't look like the way you want it to. It's blue and it's left justified instead of being center justified. So to change heading styles, you go to Home, and then I believe you may be able to, let's see, create a style. You can probably also, I think, right-clicking. Yeah. So if you, all right, there's different ways to do this. Let me show you again now that I'm more confident in how to do it. So if you click on Styles and you hover over the style that you want to change and do a right-click, then you can modify that style. And you can change it the same. So here it gives you the preview. You can change anything about it in the same way that you would with every the other formatting. You can also do some of it right here. You can center justify it, you can left justify it, you can right justify it. You can change the, you can make it bold or not bold, size, and the font. So if you were using Arial for your dissertation, you'd probably have to change this to Arial so that your fonts, so that your headings look the same as your body text. Does that answer your question? Okay. I believe that you can also do it from, if you break out here, I think you can also, maybe under options, no, it's not. You can probably right-click on these two, or even there. Yeah, there it is. You can also click on that little caret and modify the style from there. Okay. Any other questions about the table of contents? Yeah. The grad school doesn't care, and so I think it's kind of handy to be able to click on there. Control plus click to follow, it looks like. It's different for Word and Mac. But yeah, it might be helpful for your committee members if they want to navigate that way. Cool. Okay. All right, so if you turn the page over that we've just been working on for tables of tables or figures, etc., there are ways that you can do this using the citations, and some of you may have played around with that. I'm going to show you a different way that allows you to be able to have multiple things that coexist in the document at the same time. It's a little bit more obscure, but I think that once you get the hang of it, it's more powerful. So let's go down to, first we're going to do it, we're going to mark the text that we want to appear for a table. And you remember that page that we turned? It was page 8. That's the first table in chapter 1. And so what we're going to do, in a way that's very similar to how we marked the text that we wanted to appear in the table of contents with heading styles, we're going to mark this text, but instead we're going to do Alt, Shift, and the letter O. So I'm going to click on my keyboard, Alt, Shift, the letter O, and then this dialog box pops up that you've probably never seen before. It says, and it's called Mark Table of Contents Entry. And it has this table identifier here. If you kept this as C, for as in table of contents C, then the next time you updated your table of contents, it would pull this into the table of contents. But we don't want to do that. Instead, we want to choose a different table identifier. So since we're doing tables, we're going to choose T. And you can leave this level as 1, because we're never really going to have like subheadings or like in the table in the list of tables. Now the other thing that you'll see is that the title of this table is bolded right here, and so it came through as bolded also when it pulled it into the entry box. So, but we don't want it to be bolded in the list of tables. So you want to select it again and then press Control B to unbold it. So by pressing Control B, I've unbolded that, and now it's marked with table identifier T level 1. I'm going to click on Mark. When you do that, you'll see that it has created these little squigglies, and this just shows that it's been marked. Here's that table identifier T. Here's level 1. And actually it looks like I didn't quite unbold all of it, so I could unbold it here too. This is how it's going to appear when it's up in the table of contents. Now don't worry, this is not going to appear when you print it, and you can convince yourself of that by hiding the non-printing characters, so that goes away. But if you want to remember what you've marked, then you would just click those to show those non-printing characters. Everything okay? It didn't go away. Interesting. Does anybody else have that issue, that when they hide the non-printing characters, those squiggles are still there? That was a first for me. I've never. Can you do a print preview and see if it shows up? Hopefully it doesn't. Okay, all right. It won't mess up your spacing because it's like syntax that Word is using. Yeah, it could be. All right. Okay. So now that we've marked the table title that we want to appear in the list of tables, we can now go up here in the document map to list of tables, and we can put our cursor where we want the list of tables to start. And then we're going to go back to references. Now instead of adding a table of contents, we're going to insert a table of figures. Now don't worry that these are not figures, they're tables. That's okay, because we're going to be able to define which table identifier we're going to use to create this list. So if you click on list of table of figures, then by default it's going to show the page numbers, right align the page numbers with a tab leader of dots, which is all this is good. This is all what we want. But we need to go to I think we need to go to options. Yep. We have to go to options, and we're going to say that we want to use table entry fields, and we have to select the one that we've been using to mark the table titles, and that was T. So make sure that nothing else is selected, just table entry fields and table identifier T. Click on OK, and then OK again, and then it inserts our list of anything that we've marked with table identifier T will show up right here. And this just does, if you click on it and then right click, you can update the field. If you've added a new table or changed page numbers, you can update the page numbers only or the entire table, just like you would with the table of contents. All right. We're almost to the end. Oh yes, did you have a question? Okay, were you using your own document or mine? Okay, so you probably marked something with a caption at one point. So you'll either, if you wanted to do it this way, so you can't have, you have to choose one or the other. So you'll need to go and find the caption that you created and just delete that caption if you wanted to do it this way. Yep, great question. That's right. Yeah, because you're marking exactly what you want to mark here. Yeah, good question. All right. I don't think I know exactly what you're trying to say. Are you talking about like once you've already created the table and then you change something here? No. No. Yeah, so you're saying like if I wanted to change this to be table 1.3 here, would it change everything? No. And actually, if you did that and then it keeps that edit, but if you update the field and update the entire table, it's going to change it back to whatever it was done in the other document. Yep. That's right. Yep. So if I change this to 1.3 and then now update it here, then it will say well, let's see. Oh, do you know why I didn't do it? It's because you'd have to either remark it or you would have to change that in the stuff that's in that syntax. Yeah, so you'd have to change it right here. Because when I changed this, it didn't actually change it over here. But if you want to remark something, you can just select that, delete it, and then you can Alt-Shift-O and remark it. Mm-hmm. Yep, you can change the syntax too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. So last thing we're gonna talk about is creating a list of figures, which probably you'll all have to do too. So if we start in chapter 1 and we go to our first figure, we're going to do this the same exact way. We're going to select the text that we want to be show up in the list of figures. Then we're going to do Alt-Shift, letter O. While I have everything selected here, I'm just going to go ahead and press Control-B to unbold it. And then what table? Should we use table identifier C? No. Should we use table identifier T? Nope, we don't use that either. So we have to choose a different table identifier. In this case, we're going to use table identifier F because we're doing figures. So click on Mark and close that. Now I have another figure on the next 2 pages down. So I'm just going to do this one as well right now, just really quick. Alt-Shift-O, then Control-B to unbold it. Table identifier F, mark, and close. Now we can go up to the list of figures and put our cursor where we want it. Now it's center justified, so I have to make it left justified. And then I'm going to go back to the References tab. I'm going to click on the same thing again, Insert Table of Figures. And I'm going to click on Options. And we're going to use table identifier F this time. So everything else, this is all the same as before, but until we get to one section right here. So it says, do you want to replace the selected table of figures? And what it's selecting is it's the one we made a few minutes ago, the list of tables. So in this case, even though it thinks it knows what we want to do, because it's highlighted yes, here you actually have to say no, because we want both of these lists to coexist in the same document. So we still have the list of tables, and we also have the list of figures.